So hello dear students, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy interview guidance program. So in today's lecture we will be discussing about the increasing cyclone activity in the Arabian Sea. Okay, so in recent times what has been happening, there is an increasing frequency and intensity of cyclones in the western coast, particularly in the Arabian Sea. So generally the eastern coast or Bay of Bengal is known for the destructive cyclones, so that impacts entire eastern coast of India. So however, the cyclone activity increasing in the Arabian Sea, that is particularly concerning for us, because we have to face the problem of the extreme destruction that is being caused by these cyclones, and they also have a lot of impact on the livelihoods of the people and the infrastructure, and even they are responsible for poverty and poor living standards of the people, and that even drive the climate refugee crisis. So therefore in this lecture we will try to understand what is the major reason for increasing cyclone activity in the Arabian Sea. So what has been the major driving factor, and what would be the consequences, and what we can do, even though we cannot do much with respect to the cyclones. However, we can take certain steps so that could mitigate the impact of cyclones on India's western coast. So therefore we will discuss this in a very detailed manner, right? First and foremost, scientists have been saying that climate change has been warming the Arabian Sea. So if you remember the origin of cyclone primarily because of increasing sea surface temperatures, or it originates at a region where there is higher sea surface temperatures, because in tropical cyclones the higher sea surface temperatures would lead to the origin of the cyclones over the oceans. So because of climate change, what has been happening, the Arabian Sea temperatures have been increasing. So increasing temperatures have been resulting in the origin of these cyclones. So warmer Arabian Sea has been producing more cyclones in a year, and in the year 2019 itself, 5 cyclones in Arabian Sea and 3 cyclones in the Bay of Bengal. Now earlier the trend was the Bay of Bengal used to see more cyclones compared to the Arabian Sea, but if you look at the current tradition, that Arabian Sea has seen more cyclones since 2019 than the Bay of Bengal. So this is alarming for India, because it could have a huge consequences on us. So therefore in this particular lecture we are going to discuss deal with 5 major questions. So what are these questions? Firstly, we will understand what are the cyclones, and secondly we will also discuss what about the cyclones in the Arabian Sea, why the intensity of cyclones has been increasing. So that could be the third question that we are going to discuss, and we will also briefly understand the impacts of these cyclones, and finally we conclude this discussion by the way forward, discussing the way forward about these cyclones. So that is the mitigation measures that we can take in this regard. Now in this context we need to understand what are cyclones, or what is a cyclone. Now the definition of cyclone is, it is essentially a large system of winds. Now if you carefully observe winds, so carefully observe this image, you can see here, so this entire system which has been developing here, this is a cyclone. Okay, so this can be called as a large system of cyclone. Okay, large system of winds. Okay, so this is large system of winds, rotating winds I can say. Okay, so this is a large system of rotating winds, and that particularly rotating in a anti-clockwise direction. Okay, so they are developing or rotating in anti-clockwise direction. Now the major difference between the tropical cyclones and the temperate cyclones, or extra tropical cyclones, is that the tropical cyclones rotate in the anti-clockwise direction, and the extratropical cyclones rotate in the clockwise direction. Okay, so this is a large system of winds which are rotating in a clockwise direction, counterclockwise direction. Okay, so these winds have been rotating in a rotating around a low atmospheric pressure. Okay, first there will be low pressure area, and around the low pressure area the winds start circulating in a counterclockwise direction, right? This is a large system of winds that have been circulating in a counterclockwise direction with the center low atmospheric pressure center. Okay, so if you look at this cyclones which originate in the extratropical regions or temperate regions, so they rotate in a clockwise direction, right? Now if you look at the occurrence of these cyclones, so these cyclonic winds move across all regions of the earth, so except the equatorial belt. So if you look at the cyclones at the equatorial belt, so there will be no cyclones at the equatorial belt, because please understand, for the formation, for the origin of cyclones, there is a need for the Coriolis force. Okay, so Coriolis force is necessary for the origin of these cyclones, but at the equator, the Coriolis force is 0. So since Coriolis force is 0, cyclones would not originate at the equator regions, but except equator they originate in the tropical regions, temperate regions as well. So in this context we will understand the major cause of these cyclones. What is the major cause? So the major cause is atmospheric disturbances around the low pressure area. So please remember that around a low pressure area the wind systems circulate in a anti-clockwise direction, right? So these can be called as atmospheric disturbances around the low pressure area, and this can be distinguished by a swift and often a very destructive air circulation, right? So apart from this, if we can talk about the major causes of these cyclones, increasing sea surface temperatures. Okay, so increasing sea surface temperatures, so increasing these temperatures will lead to the formation of low pressure area, and low pressure area will lead to the origin of cyclones and developing those cyclones over a period of time, and they will become more and more stronger over a period of time. So that could cause a destructive effect on the Indian coast, across the Indian coast. Now every cyclone has a eye, so this eye is a low pressure region. For example, for this cyclone, this is called as, this low pressure region is considered as the eye of the cyclone. This is the low pressure center of the cyclone, right? So I hope you understood this. Okay, so this low pressure region at the center of a cyclone wind system is called as eye, right? So after that we should also talk about the eye wall as well. So this eye wall, so that particularly surrounds, okay, so this eye wall, so that surrounds the eye with the strongest winds and heaviest rain, and is the most destructive part of the entire cyclone system, right? So the cyclone eye wall is the most destructive part of the entire cyclone. So this is basically what is cyclone. Now next question that we are going to deal with here, what about the cyclones which are originating in the Arabian Sea? So now please understand, Bay of Bengal also prone to the cyclones, and Arabian Sea also prone to the cyclones. So from the earlier part of this discussion we understood that in the year 2009 we have seen 5 cyclones from the Arabian Sea, and we have seen just 3 cyclones from the Bay of Bengal. Okay, so therefore if you look at the total cyclones which have been making up, which have been originating in both Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, so they constitute around 6% of the all global tropical cyclones annually. Okay, so total they just constitute 6% of the total global cyclones, right? So however, so there was a research paper that was released in the year 2021. So what does this research paper says about the frequency and intensity of these cyclones? So the research paper says that increasing trend in the intensity, frequency and duration of these cyclones observed over the Arabian Sea. So since from 1982 to 2019, there is a significantly increasing trend in the cyclones. Okay, so there's an increasing trend in the cyclone activity in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. Similarly, in 2022 also there was a paper. Okay, so this paper says that increasing sea surface temperatures in the Arabian Sea. So please remember, climate change is mostly responsible for increasing sea surface temperatures. So therefore this is driving up the temperatures, sea surface temperatures, so thereby it lead to the origin of cyclones. So however, this research paper says that in the Arabian Sea itself, the sea surface temperatures have increased from 1.2 degrees Celsius to 1.4 degrees Celsius in recent decades. And that is the major driver of cyclones, right? So this is a major driver of cyclones in the Arabian Sea. So these were the results of the research that was conducted on increasing intensity and the frequency of cyclones in the Arabian Sea. Okay, so this particular paper that was published in the year 2022 also highlighted that there's a 52% increase in the frequency of cyclones. Okay, so during the 2001 and 2019. So this is specifically in the Arabian Sea. However, in contrast to this, there's an 8% decrease in the cyclone activity or cyclone intensity in the Bay of Bengal. So therefore it is particularly alarming. Now whenever we see any cyclone so that has been developing over the Arabian Sea, so we can expect that there's a 90% of the probability that it is extreme cyclone. Okay, so it is more destructive in nature. So that can be evident from the fact that the sea surface temperatures in the Arabian Sea have been extremely increasing over a period of time. Okay, so here the list of important cyclones that happened in the Arabian Sea right from the past 5 years. Okay, so the cyclones like Cyclone Vayu, Cyclone Maha and Cyclone Kyar, that was in 2019, Cyclone Nisarga, a very destructive, Cyclone Taukte, Cyclone Biparjoy and Cyclone Tej. So Cyclone Biparjoy and Cyclone Tej took place in the year 2023. So all these cyclones have originated in the Arabian Sea itself. So in this context, we will briefly understand the major reasons so that can be attributed for the increasing cyclones in the Arabian Sea. So what are the major reasons for the same? So first and foremost, global warming and consequent climate change. Okay, so for the most of the negative consequences on the planet Earth, global warming is a key factor. It is a leading factor. So because of the global warming, the sea surface temperatures in the Arabian Sea have been significantly increasing, and that led to the change in the character of the Arabian Sea. So therefore it has been driving to the formation or development of the cyclones, most destructive cyclones in the Arabian Sea. Okay, so this has been leading to formation or development of severe cyclones, and those cyclones have been sustaining over a period of time. So after that, we should also talk about the vertical shear as well. Okay, so the vertical shear, so it usually refers to the winds. Okay, vertical shear usually means winds. Okay, so they can change from the surface to the top of the atmosphere. Okay, so this vertical wind shear is also responsible. So the weak vertical wind shear promotes the formation of cyclones. Okay, so this can be called as vertical wind shear, and weak vertical wind shear further propels the formation of cyclones. So this essentially means that how strongly the winds can change from the surface to the top of the atmosphere. right? So after that, the positive Indian Ocean dipole. So this positive Indian Ocean dipole and the negative Indian Ocean dipole are actually associated with the El Nino and La Nina as well. So whenever we experience the positive Indian Ocean dipole, then we can see the warm ocean temperatures over the Western Indian Ocean. Okay, so these warm ocean waters, so warm ocean waters over the Western Indian Ocean would also fuel the cyclone activity in the Arabian Sea. Okay, so it refers to warmer sea surface temperatures in the Western Indian Ocean relative to the east. Okay, so this could be colder compared to the Western Indian Ocean. So after that, the warming of Arabian Sea as well, because if you look at the Arabian Sea, it is mostly an enclosed sea and rivers don't flow into the rivers don't flow into the Arabian Sea. So therefore, this has been increasing the warming of Arabian Sea, and that can increase the frequency as well as intensity of these tropical cyclones in the North Indian Ocean. Okay, so they have been increasing the frequency. So therefore, we will also briefly discuss the impacts of these tropical cyclones as well. So what are the major impacts? For example, if you look at the western coast, okay, so if you look at the western coast of India, particularly this is western coast, so they will face a lot of consequences, especially, so it destroys the lives and the livelihoods of the people, it destroys the infrastructure, it fuels the climate emergency and even the climate refugee. People start migrating from the western coast to the other parts, so that could also create the problem of climate refugee crisis. Okay, so this could be particularly for the western coast, because in the Arabian Sea the frequency of cyclones have increased significantly. So after that, we need to talk about the intensity of these cyclones as well. So there's an increasing intensity of cyclones, and they potentially cause high wind and storm surges and severe rainfall as well. Okay, so this has been significantly increasing the intensity of the cyclones. Okay, so that could be a potential cause of high wind, storm surges and several or severe rainfall. Okay, so after that, we should talk about the population as well. Okay, so because mostly the cyclones impact people who are below poverty line, people who are poor, and it can destroy their lives and livelihoods. Now if you look at the entire western coast, so this western coast is densely populated area. Okay, so the entire western coast is densely populated area. Okay, so for example, from the Tiruvananthapuram to the Gujarat coast, so therefore there could be worst impact on the people because of the increasing intensity of these cyclones. So impact on the fishes as well, because fishing is one of the most important activity for the people across the western coast. So therefore it could destroy their lives and the livelihoods of the indigenous communities and artisanal fisheries. Okay, so it could also impact the southwest monsoon as well, because country significantly dependent on southwest monsoon for its rainfall. Okay, so that could have implications on drinking water and the agriculture needs as well, right? So these are the major impacts of increasing frequency and intensity of cyclones in the Arabian Sea. However, what steps have to be taken in this regard? What steps have to be taken? So we need to build the cyclone resilient or disaster resilient infrastructure across the western coast. So this should be one of the priority. So not just across the western coast, but on the eastern coast as well, we need to build the cyclone resilient infrastructure, so therefore it can withstand any destructive cyclone, and that could also significantly minimize the costs and the financial requirements, a financial burden on the government. Secondly, we need to take steps to reduce climate change as well as global warming. So we need to aggressively move towards the net zero target. Okay, so that could minimize these consequences. And apart from that, India should also compel and convince the developed countries to do more in terms of financing and technology transfer for these developed countries. So apart from that, we need to take up the mitigation and adaptation measures. We need to take up the mitigation and adaptation measures so that are sustainable, and community involvement in the disaster management process. And apart from that, we should also strengthen our early warning system with respect to these cyclones, so that we can shiftly relocate the people from the vulnerable areas. So all these steps have to be taken in order to reduce the impact of the cyclones across the western coast. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you.